Alright, hello once again. I'm going to start out today's lesson by asking you all a question, and that is, what is the most common phobia in our society? Now, when a teacher first asked me that question about 10 years ago, my first thought was, well, obviously it's death. People fear death the most. And so I raised my hand and I said that, but what I was told is that no, that death is actually second. It's second to public speaking, which I found unbelievable. So if you fear public speaking more than death, then you are part of the normal group of people, I guess, in our society that feel that way. Unfortunately, if you do fall into that category, for you, uh, speaking and public speaking in general is a very important skill to develop in life, and just communication with people in general is a very important skill to develop in life. And today, that is going to be the focus of our lesson as we talk a little bit about writing an informative speech. So today's lesson, we're going to talk about the different components of writing an informative speech, and then after we get done, you're going to have a chance to write your own speech and then later give that speech to the class. The first thing we want to talk about are what are known as the 6 C's of informative speaking. So when you write an informative speech, you want to make sure that you follow all of these C's. So you want to make sure your speech is clear, concise, complete, correct, concrete, and it connects. Now, I always break this down a little bit. Um, by clear, correct, and complete. Oh, why is this not? All right. By clear, correct, and or clear, concise, and complete, all you're asking yourself is, do I say? I say. Do I say what I want to? Do I say what I want to without fluff? All right. Do I make my point without having a bunch of filler? Is everything that needs to be included in my speech in there without including a bunch of meaningful information? Then we get down to correct. That's pretty simple. Is, actually both of these, is it accurate? Is it accurate and understandable? We'll get there. There we go. Is it accurate and understandable? And lastly, with the connect is just simply, does my audience care? Maybe this will be faster. Does my audience care? Okay. So you have these 6 C's that can be broken down into 3 separate components. And anytime you write a speech, you want to make sure that you're following all these C's, that your speech, all the information is clear, concise, complete, correct, concrete, and it connects with your audience. Now, the second component of an informative speech that we need to cover is what is known as the 5 W's and an H. Okay. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, what are the 5 W's and an H? Well, simply put, they're just the question words. Actually, I forgot the how at the end. So it's who, what, when, why, where, and how. So whenever you sit down to write an informative speech, the first thing you need to think about is making sure you understand the 5 W's and an H of whatever your topic is. If it's a person, who are they? What did they do? When did they do it? When were they born? Why did they do these things? Where did they do them? And how did they do them? If you're informing us of an event, same thing. Who, what, when, why, where. So the first step you need to take whenever you write an informative speech is you need to know the who, what, when, why, and where, and how. Once you have all that information, you can then get to the second step, and that's where you take a step back and you're going to select the questions that follow a focal point. Now, what I mean by this is that when you give speeches, you're not always going to just spew out all the information. You're not going to always include the who, what, when, why, where, and how. I always go back to this funny interaction I had with a student a few years ago when we were writing biographies in English 1, my freshman English 1 class. And a student came up to me, and this was a 2-page assignment. And a student came up to me and said, "Mr. Van Epperen, I would like to write a biography of Barack Obama." And I said, "Great, sounds good." He had just been elected at that time. I thought it was a good topic. And so I asked the student, so what is your focus going to be? How are you going to do that? And with a straight face, they looked at me and said, "Well, first I want to talk about his childhood. Then I want to talk about his education. Then I want to talk about where he went to college. And then I want to talk about his political career." And I looked at the student and I said, "Okay, so that's about 800 pages. How are you going to do that in 2 pages?" And they just didn't understand that, when you have a bigger topic and you have a boundary that you need to fit your speech or your paper within, you need to make choices on what your focus is going to be. So for instance, if you're going to do a prominent figure like Barack Obama, you might only want to choose, say, his role in the Senate in the 5 years leading up to his presidency. Or if you want to do Aaron Rodgers, maybe you only wanted to do his college career, his high school career. Okay, so you need to select the questions that will help you follow the focal point. Now we need to talk about how we are going to structure our informative speech. Now, hopefully you all know what this is. This apparently is an outdated version of the food pyramid. It's when I was growing up, this is how they taught kids what they were supposed to eat every day. And if you look at this model, it's set up in such a way that you have this big chunk at the bottom. This is supposed to provide a really good foundation for you, and this represents the most amount of servings you should have each day. So you see over here it says you should have 6 to 11 servings of all of these things every day. Then you get up the food pyramid and you have fruits and veggies, so that makes the next most important. Then you have milk, yogurt, and cheese, and meat, poultry, fish, dry beans, eggs, and nut groups, and that's the next most important. And then lastly, so least amount of intake a day is fats, oils, and sweets. So that's how they've set it up to teach kids that you have this base underneath you, and that's the most important. Now, when we talk about informative writing, or informative speaking rather, because I'm sure you're wondering what does any of this have to do with informative speaking, we do the exact same thing. We use what's called an inverse pyramid. Now you'll see we have our pyramid structure here. The only thing that we've done is we flipped it. That makes it the inverse pyramid, for the sole reason that whenever we write, whenever we always outline chronologically. You'd never write an outline and have your conclusion be the first thing on the page. Okay, we're just trained because of the way we read that whatever's top of the page should be first. So they've switched it up a little bit to help us understand that. So our biggest chunk, our base of the pyramid, is going to be those 5 W's and an H, or just simply the most important info. This informative speaking inverse pyramid is also what they use in journalism writing. If you ever read a newspaper, if you've read a newspaper recently, take a look at it again, and what you'll notice is every newspaper, they always in the first paragraph get to the most important details. That's because they know that people, when they read the newspaper, are going to not read every single article from start to finish. And so they need to get those most important details out there to the readers so that maybe they'll read on and they choose to get further into the story. Same thing here when you're speaking. You want to give the most important information first, before then going to the next chunk, which is just important details, okay, or more in-depth details. And then last, you're going to go down to other background information. So if I was going to give an informative speech, say a 5-minute informative speech on the Packers, I might talk about, um, when were started as a team, where they play, some of the famous players, some of the famous coaches, some of the accomplishments of the team, and that will almost be my 5 minutes. If I have more time, or if I get done with my five W's and an H, I might talk about specific details, say the changes to the stadium that have occurred, the changes to the uniform maybe that have occurred, things that might be not the most important details, but if you're going further in depth, they're important. Then further, we might get into other background information, just things like the fans, maybe ticket sales, just cultural things. Things that really, if you didn't, you could understand the Packers without knowing, but it just kind of enhances the subject. All right, so those are the main components, okay? Just to kind of review quickly, these are the 6 C's. So whenever you write your speech, you need to make sure that your speech is clear, concise, complete, correct, concrete, and it connects with your audience. First of all, when you write your speech, you need to determine the 5 W's and an H, and then select the question, select the information that will follow your focal point. Then you're going to write your speech, okay? And when you write your speech, you're going to structure it in this manner. You're going to give me the most important information first, followed by important describing details, and then give me other background information. All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to go back on the Cultural Literacy website, and you're going to follow the instructions, and you're all going to have a crack at doing this speech, or writing a speech, using these tools in a manner, or rather, in a way that will discuss a prominent figure in our society. So I look forward to seeing your speeches. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Have a great day.